Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, welcome to this Friday, the 8th of April 2022. Well, it's a beautiful day out here in Brisbane at this point in time, 24 degrees and mostly sunny, though there has been some forecast for some rain probably later today. But at the moment, it's just absolutely beautiful and fantastic. Could do with a little bit of a breeze, but it's not happening right at this point in time. Hey, it's Friday and there's so much happening out in the weekend. But don't forget that the Holi festival for tomorrow has now been cancelled. And that and all other news we will bring to you as we go along. Of course, we have the latest news today. And then, of course, we will finish off with the Daily India report right here on Australian Indian Radio. Well, first of all, what's happening on that campaigning trail? So, let's take a look at this report where Scott Morrison and Anthony Albanese are out on the campaign trail. Let's see what they're to.
Laura, what's going on and how does this affect the Prime Minister's options about when he will head to the Governor-General?
Well, the long-running brawl about pre-selections in the Liberal Party lead continues to go on. Today, the High Court agreed to expedite a hearing of an appeal about the pre-selection process. The upshot of that is that it will hear that at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon and decide whether it continues onwards. If it did continue onwards, it would throw into question a whole series of pre-selections for the Liberal Party in New South Wales. That obviously affects the Prime Minister's capacity to call an election. There was some speculation he would do that tomorrow. The thinking is now that he will do it on the weekend, and while he would have scope to still call an election with that High Court matter outstanding, it would be a punt that he would have to be hoping that would all be resolved before the nominations closed in about 20 days after the election is called.
It's not just this year's pre-selections that are a feature of the campaign. The Prime Minister's own pre-selection more than a decade ago is still in the news.
That's right. The pre-selection brawl, which was generally regarded as incredibly dirty in 2007 in the seat of Cook, continues to feature. The candidate who initially won the first round of ballots in that pre-selection, Michael Toke, has appeared on the television in the last 24 hours to say that he's rejected a lot of the criticisms that have been made of him. But most significantly, I think Lee has said that a serving cabinet minister has agreed with his assessment, which wasn't particularly attractive, of the Prime Minister's character. So it's sort of just one more iron in the fire or firecracker in the path of the Prime Minister when he's facing this really huge deluge of criticisms of his own management style and character from his own side of politics.
Laura, one constant in every political campaign is the unexpected. Anthony Albanese had a dose of it in the past 24 hours when a punter barreled up to a media conference and attempted to ask a question. The Prime Minister had a dose of it last night too when a pensioner took him to task in a pub. Scott Morrison listened very politely and he gave the man a full 5 minutes of his attention before he wound it up. Let's take a look.
This is what we should do. You raised two very important issues, one on the immigration matter and one on your...
Yes!
So let's sit down with one of my team.
All right. Now, who can I contact tomorrow?
Yeah, well, you can sit down
Hey,
with
I'm doing this before the election, mate, because this is two promises that you made. You know another promise that you made?
Okay, well, look, we've had quite a chat.
Hey, yeah.
Laura, politicians and their staffers work overtime to stage manage photo opportunities during election campaigns, but once you're mingling with the public, there are always variables.
There are, the oldest one I remember is poor Tammy Fraser walking through a department store with Malcolm Fraser back in the day, seeing somebody behind her and turning around to shake their hand, only to find out that she was shaking hands with a store dummy. But there have been lots of incidents. Paul Keating famously walked into the wrong pie shop and turned out there wasn't a supporter behind the counter. Malcolm Turnbull found himself talking to somebody with their pet rat. Bill Shorten found himself meeting a resources worker who actually was earning so much money he didn't respect the fact that Bill Shorten wanted to get him to pay more taxes. The public, they're just not very helpful in their election campaign.
The public is the best part of any campaign, I think. The other feature of election campaigns, or the lead up to them really, is that governments will try to do what's known as clearing the decks, and there was a bit of that today.
That's right, clearing the decks, getting rid of embarrassing issues. About 20 asylum seekers were released from detention today, Lee, including 8 from the sort of infamous Park Hotel in Melbourne. Now, you would hope that they were being released for reasons other than it's clearing the decks, but it obviously removes a point of contention, particularly in those seats where coalition MPs are facing challenges from more moderate independents who target the issue of our treatment of asylum seekers amongst a range of other issues.
Laura Tingle next.
And that is a very good point there, that, you know, if these the detainees are being released, that they are being released for more than just political reasons. So that would be the right thing and the right way to do. Well, right now, as we know, yesterday, the announcement that came from Prime Minister while we were making the news that the federal government was not going to match the contribution by Queensland government to assist people. But right now, Morrison government has agreed. We did play that segment live yesterday, but here's that report.
Leanne Handley is worn down. She'd only just finished renovating her Rockley home when floodwaters surged through in February.
I still have no power in my house. I still have no running water but a garden hose. And I've got cold sores just from constant stress.
6 weeks on, she's just getting tradies in to help rebuild.
I've worked out that I've lost about 170k in belongings and renovations and now work being done.
She's one of thousands of flood victims weighing up her future. A government buyback scheme is now an option after state and federal leaders agreed to split costs.
That is finally a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel.
Light that wasn't there yesterday after the Prime Minister initially rejected the proposal.
State governments have to step up.
This morning,
So we'll make it happen.
36 hours after the Prime Minister said no, he's now said yes.
and the reason for his about-face,
I'm not going to have people left in the lurch as a result of the Queensland State Government playing politics on the eve of an election.
No, I think what we've seen is the Prime Minister again, too slow to act.
Mr Morrison still insists the $740 million proposal to flood-proof or voluntarily buy back homes is a state responsibility, but he's caved to paying half with certain demands.
The state government in Queensland and other states for that matter will need to be transparent about how much money is getting paid through.
The politicking doesn't help flood victims. They just want to know how to plan their futures. Almost 8,000 homes were affected by the latest deluge. About 4,000 of those were deemed unsuitable to live in. As to who will be eligible for this money, that's still being worked out. Tina?
And that is going to be another issue where we will find out who is actually eligible. There are all those terms and conditions. And so again, it's not an easy task, but at least that announcement is good that federal government has now come on board. Better late than never is what I'd say. Well, right now you would have noticed all these big billboards, freedom, freedom, freedom everywhere. So how is this United Australia Party's big and huge, massive campaign going to affect the upcoming election?
Never before have our major parties been out Australians to vote for the United Australia Party.
The United Australia Party set Australia free from this coming election.
Stop the lockdowns. Time for a change.
This is the last chance.
We want freedom, freedom, freedom.
You can't miss it. Saturation advertising from a political party that opinion polls suggest may not even pick up a single seat.
The billboards have only just started to roll out. We'll have TV, we'll have radio, we'll have newspaper, we'll have social media.
You'll have a feeling you won't be able to escape anymore, unlike 2019 where it wasn't so noticeable. They're going to be worse on digital and social media because of that's where more of us are.
The United Australia Party, bankrolled and effectively controlled by businessman Clive Palmer, broke election spending records in 2019. And this time around, Mr Palmer is promising to at least match or spend even more.
Well, I think the sheer amount of money we're talking about here, which I think has been correctly labelled as obscene, really flouts the democratic process altogether.
I completely disagree with that conclusion. We need to actually spend that amount of money to give ourselves at least an opportunity to have our case heard.
They even use surveillance technology to stop people from taking too much toilet
So
paper.
what is the United Australia Party trying to achieve? At the National Press Club today, Clive Palmer outlined his unorthodox economic vision, proposing to take monetary policy away from the independent Reserve Bank and forcing banks to cap housing interest rates at 3% over the next 5 years.
This is an emergency that we face in this country like any other. In times of war, hardship and the Depression, the government has had to act.
The Queensland businessman denied his political spending spree had anything to do with promoting his own interests.
I just don't think anything I do in politics is about business, because it only costs money, it doesn't generate money. It's really about, being able to provide other alternatives for Australians, what we do.
This pitch, as being a real alternative to Labor and the Coalition, attracted retiree Simon Flitcroft to the United Australia Party 3 years ago. After a cold call from a party organiser, he decided to stand as a candidate.
Since we've been talking about dissatisfaction with the two major parties, it was almost like the universe was supplying a potential response.
But the party wasn't what he expected. The candidate for the Brisbane seat of Bonner was disappointed when, after the election, Clive Palmer declared his ultimate aim was to keep Labor out of office.
We were being used as effectively pawns to prop up the LNP. If I thought that I was going out there effectively representing the LNP, I would have wasted my time.
The United Australia Party's only MP is former Liberal backbencher Craig Kelly, who insists his new party is strictly independent.
How can we believe the party that it's not really just trying to prop up the LNP, given what Clive Palmer said back in 2019?
Well, we can see that by what we've already said about our preferences, firstly in the Senate, where we have said very clearly that we will not be preferencing the Liberal Party, or the Labor Party for that matter, at all.
When it comes to lower house preferences, Mr Palmer was giving little away at the National Press Club.
From my personal perspective, I think I'd put the Greens ahead of Liberal and Labor. That's my personal perspective, because they haven't been in government and they haven't been responsible for this debt.
The party this time around is focusing more on libertarian causes, resisting and criticising COVID public health measures that require vaccinations in many workplaces.
When we have governments that adopt vaccine passports, we are no longer free.
Are you seriously saying we don't have freedom here in Australia, or is this a bit of political hyperbole?
Absolutely. I have people talk to me every day that have been thrown out of their jobs, that have been sacked and dismissed.
So there you are, ladies and gentlemen, the Freedom Party. Of course, we have seen their mass campaign out there, and as the opinion poll said, that it might not even get them the single seat. Well, it will be time, will only tell. We will see how it goes. Well, right now, we saw the Anthony Albanese. We've seen our Prime Minister being mobbed. In South Australia, the Chief Medical Officer got mobbed as well in the crowd. So when you're out in the crowd, you never know what could happen.
For 2 years, she's helped to keep the public safe. Now it's Nicola Spurrier in need of protection. The professor flanked by police as she was swamped by protesters while leaving the Supreme Court.
Their behaviour today is more than just unacceptable. I think it's inconsistent with who we are as a state and as a country.
The Chief Public Health Officer had been spared from appearing as a witness in the vaccine mandate case brought on by health workers, including former Adelaide Crow Denny Van Hagen, who received a very different reception. The applicant's lawyer also criticising the protesters' actions, saying we strongly condemn what happened this morning and it must never happen again. Miss Van Hagen lost her nursing jobs because of the vaccine mandates and argues the police commissioner who imposed the rules acted in excess of his power. Police Commissioner and State Coordinator Grant Stevens could also be called upon to give evidence in the trial, but the court heard today he's unwell and it's unlikely he'll get any better by tomorrow.
That's extraordinary scenes there, and of course an extraordinary development in that case as well. Well, right now, looking at what we eat, we are Australians. We eat and we also vote.
Well, it's election time, and there's one question on everybody's lips. What was Will Smith thinking? But the second question, who will win the Australian federal election? Well, if we look at the regional seat of Eagle Boys, we're in for a tight race. Of course, this seat traditionally goes to the candidate with the biggest hat, and this year it's looking to go to preferences, as in which Akubra do you prefer? To the flood-affected region of Deluge. With all the water they've had up there, you'd expect being the guy who doesn't hold a hose would be a positive, but instead we're expecting to see a large number of informal votes against the government, with 61% of voters expected to scrawl the F word on their ballot, 23% the C word, and 16% are undecided between curse word or crude drawing. And if we look at the Liberal Party's campaign material in seats where they're facing a challenge from an independent, we can see a big swing away from the Liberal Party blue logo towards a nameless teal palette. Which party is this man running for? Who knows? Maybe we'll never know. In the beachside electorate of Thong, we can see 31% of voters are expected to rock up to the polling booth in their Speedos, 58% in a wetsuit, and 11%, well, they're just going to let it all hang out. And in the Tasmanian seat of Mona, they're expecting a huge turnout for a local artist candidate who crafted sustainable campaign posters from their own fecal matter. But let's zoom out to see the big picture. If we look at the primary vote, the ALP is polling 38%, Coalition polling 36%, and the Bullet Train for Australia party is steady at 0%, meaning the decision to dissolve the party in 2017 isn't paying dividends just yet. As for name recognition, 94% of Australians are aware of ScoMo, but at this stage, 72% of Australians still believe Albanese is a brand of mid-tier prosciutto. Of course, during the campaign, we're also expecting to see an increase in vox pops to pad out TV election coverage, like this one in a seat where voters are not happy.
I'm not happy.
Just like that. Back to you, Lee.
Happy just like that. So very well put together. Well, right now it's time to go to our daily India report. With that, let's welcome Himanshu.
Welcome to Daily India Report that brings you glimpses of the changing India. In our first story, despite reports and statements that the US is cautioning India on its stand on Ukraine, Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar and US Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke over the phone to review the latest developments. State Department spokesperson Ned Price confirmed that Secretary Blinken spoke with Minister Dr. Jaishankar to review regional and global priorities, including the situation in Ukraine. Dr. Jaishankar and Blinken agreed to remain closely connected on developments. It was the second telephonic conversation between Jaishankar and Blinken in a week amid increasing disquiet in the West over India's indication to buy larger volumes of discounted crude oil from Russia. Jaishankar tweeted, spoke to @Sec Blinken ahead of our 2+2 consultations, discussed bilateral issues and latest developments pertaining to Ukraine. The conversation between the two top diplomats came ahead of the next edition of India-US 2+2 foreign and defense ministerial talks scheduled in Washington. Dr. Jaishankar and Indian Defense Minister Rajnath Singh are set to travel to Washington to hold talks with their American counterparts, Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. The phone conversation between Jaishankar and Blinken followed Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov's two-day visit to India, during which he said Moscow has begun moving toward conducting trade in national currencies with India and other partners to bypass the impediments of Western sanctions. Last week, US Deputy National Security Advisor for International Economics Dalip Singh also visited India. Celebrating 75 years of diplomatic relations between India and the Netherlands, Indian President Ramnath Kovind said during his visit to the European country that the Netherlands can play a pivotal role in strengthening India-EU ties. President of India Ramnath Kovind has said that the Netherlands can play a pivotal role in strengthening India-EU ties in areas of connectivity, energy transition and investments. The Indian President was speaking during a state banquet at Royal Palace hosted by King of the Netherlands Willem-Alexander in his honour. The Indian President said, quote, "The Netherlands is an important player in the Indo-Pacific and European Union. As key advocates for a free and open Indo-Pacific, we share a common commitment to work for global peace, security and prosperity. The Netherlands can also play a pivotal role in strengthening India-EU ties in areas of connectivity, energy transition and trade and investment." End quote. President Kovind also met the members of the Indian community living in the Netherlands. As part of the 75 years of India's independence celebrations, the President will be hosting a cultural performance to be graced by Queen Maxine and King Willem-Alexander of the Netherlands. The Kalakshetra Foundation and a 25-member troupe will enact a piece from Ramayana. In 2022, the diplomatic relations between India and the Netherlands will complete 75 years, which were established back in 1947. As India developed into a rapidly expanding economy, the bilateral trade between India and the Netherlands continued to gather momentum. This was despite the slow economic growth of the Netherlands. The Netherlands is also among the top 10 partners of India in terms of trade volume. Enhancing the current target of $26 billion in trade, Indian Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal has suggested that teams of India and Australia should target a $100 billion engagement between the two countries by 2030. Days after Indian Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal inked the India-Australia Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement with his Australian counterpart Dan Tehan, envisaging enhanced bilateral trade in goods and services to the tune of $50 billion. The minister, on an outreach mission in Australia, has set a target of taking the two-way trade to $100 billion by 2030. Describing the initial expectation of ramping up the two-way flow of goods and services from the current $26-27 billion, the Indian Commerce Minister believes that the teams on both sides should work out the potential of a $100 billion engagement between India and Australia by 2030. Goyal's Australia visit comes amidst India's first ever trade agreement with a developed economy after more than a decade, and at a time when India will want to send out a signal to other developed countries such as the UK, Canada and the EU, with whom it is currently negotiating for FTAs. India and Australia could be looking at tapping the invisible surplus on either side, India's 1.3 billion strong demographic dividends, with a huge appetite for digital connect and better quality of life, driving the government's agenda of creating new infrastructure. Australia's investable surplus is in the form of money which can get a huge opportunity to invest in India's $1.4 trillion infrastructure pipeline in the next 10 to 12 years. In the new order of things, the ECTA provides for an institutional mechanism to encourage and improve trade between the two countries by covering almost all the tariff lines dealt in by India and Australia respectively. India will benefit from preferential market access provided by Australia on 100% of its tariff lines. This includes all the labour-intensive sectors of export interest to India, such as gems and jewellery, textiles, leather, footwear, furniture, food, agricultural products, engineering products, medical devices and automobiles. On the other hand, India will be offering preferential access to Australia on over 70% of its tariff lines, including lines of export interest to Australia, which are primarily raw materials and intermediaries, such as coal, mineral ores and wines, etc. The US government is planning to bring in changes for visa interviews in India. Reports suggest that students who are refused a visa once in the summer-spring of 2022 will not be able to seek another visa interview appointment again this year. The US Embassy in India is planning a change in the visa application system for those applying in the summer of 2022, as thousands of Indian students have plans to study in US universities in the 2022 fall. In 2021, more students were interviewed and more student visas were issued in India than ever before. This year, the number of student visas is expected to be even higher than the 62,000 issued in 2021. Last summer, as US campuses opened their doors to international students after being shut down during the pandemic, the US Embassy and consulates in India had announced the opening of tens of thousands of visa interview slots since June 2021, especially for Indian students planning to join courses at universities and colleges in America in the fall 2021 session starting August-September last year. Students had been advised to visit the US Embassy website to schedule their visa appointments. The US government has now made software changes to ensure that students who are refused a visa once in the summer-spring of 2022 will not be able to seek another visa interview appointment again this year. Besides, student visa applicants are being advised to keep checking for interview dates on the US Embassy website to schedule their visa appointments once they receive their documents from US universities without any special timeline being announced for them. Air Asia is introducing new routes from India to Malaysia and Thailand as it restarts its international flights from India. Malaysian multinational low-cost airline Air Asia is all set to restart its international flights from India to Malaysia and Thailand starting April 2022. The airline has introduced 6 new routes from India to Malaysia that include Bangalore, Kuala Lumpur and Chennai, Kuala Lumpur, Tiruchirappalli to KL, which started from April 5th, Kochi to KL commencing April 18th, Kolkata to KL commencing April 23rd, and Hyderabad to KL commencing May 1st, 2022. Meanwhile, 5 new routes from India to Thailand will include Bangalore, Bangkok commencing from May 4th, Chennai, Bangkok on May 4th, Kolkata, Bangkok from May 2nd, Kochi, Bangkok from May 1st, and Jaipur, Bangkok from May 1st. Passengers can now fly with ease as quarantine has also been lifted. Further, flyers can avail of 20% off on all seats and flights on bookings done between April 4th to 10th, 2022 for the travel period from May 1st, 2022 until March 23rd, 2023. With Malaysia and Thailand reopening and travel restrictions being lifted, Air Asia will continually reintroduce international services starting from April 2022. Manoj Dharmani, Air Asia's regional commercial head for South Asia, said that India, Malaysia and Thailand have significant potential in terms of stimulating tourism and reigniting the economy. India lifted its ban on international air routes on March 27, 2022. The makers of Nani's upcoming film Ante Sundaraniki have dropped the first track titled Panchakattu. In the song, Nani shows his swag at different popular locations in the USA. Adding to the excitement for the fans of South Indian cine star Nani, producers have released the first track of his forthcoming romantic entertainer Ante Sundaraniki. Titled Panchakattu, Nani is seen exhibiting his swag as he roams about the popular places in the USA, including Times Square in New York. Vivek Sagar has done the composition of this upbeat number, while its catchy lyrics have been written by Hashit Goli. The song is melancholy about the life of the movie's primary character played by Nani. Legendary Carnatic singer Aruna Sairam has lent her voice to the melody. Nazariya Nazim will accompany Nani as Leela Thomas in her maiden Tollywood film. Nadia, Harshvardhan, Rahul Ramakrishna, Suhas and others will also play significant roles in the movie. Made under the direction of Vivek Atharya, Ante Sundaraniki has been financed by Maitri Movie Makers and will get a theatrical release on June 10. That's all for this bulletin of Daily India Report.
Akash Lodhia proudly presents the Ghazal Maestro Padma Shri Pankaj Udas live in concert at the prestigious Sydney Opera House. 4th September 2022 at 6:30 p.m. Pankaj Udas celebrating 40 years of his musical journey in a one and only mega concert accompanied by his musicians from India. Be there to witness the living legend Pankaj Udas live in concert to celebrate his musical milestone. Tickets on sale now from www.sydneyoperahouse.com.
Hello everyone, my name is Umesh Chandra and I'd like to invite you all to attend Bharatiya Navvars, a function organized by Divya Jyoti Jagriti Sansthan, and it's the celebrating Indian New Year, which is the Bikram Samrat 2071. The venue is King George Square, a very, very wonderful location. Date is 8th of April. Time is from 2 p.m. The exhibitions will start. 5 p.m. is when the cultural performances will begin. There will be food stalls, and the highlight this year is a live Ram Leela on the auspicious occasion of Ram Navami. It was a wonderful day out there. Brisbane Indian Times and Australian Indian Radio are proud to be supporting this event organized by Divya Jyoti Jagriti Sansthan. We'd like to see you all there at King George Square on the 8th of April for the exhibition from 2 p.m. and around 5 p.m. For all the cultural items. We'll see you all there. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that is happening today. We'd like to see you all there. It's a wonderful, wonderful event and a good day for it as the preparations are happening. We saw some of the social media posts of live events happening there right now. So, everything's taking place. So we'll see you there later today. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's been wonderful having your company on this Friday, the 8th of April. And until tomorrow, is goodbye from me.